Yep.
First up this morning, a story that puts the spotlight on Mental Health Month, which is always in May. The man in this picture graduated at the top of his high school class and with honors from Marquette University. He was brilliant and he was kind. In law school, he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and later schizoaffective disorder. He started hearing voices and attempted suicide several times before he died at the age of 41. His body was discovered in the Summerfest Lagoon.
And that story is about Eric Cloth. His mother, Doris, joins us today to tell us more about his story and share what she's now doing to help others who suffer with mental illness. And then Susan Schoenmarklin is also here. She's with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also known as NAMI. Thanks for being here, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Scoot in a little closer.
Yeah, let's kind of scoot in.
Join in here.
I met Doris last week. She came in to share Eric's story and some really great pictures of him, and we kind of instantly bonded. It's so great to have you here today.
Oh, thank you. It's very nice to be here, and I'm glad we have a chance to share his story and a little bit about the NAMI walks coming up. So.
And you're inspiring what you're doing to help others. Let's talk a little bit about Eric, the kind of guy he was. He was the oldest of your 3 kids.
He was the oldest of my 3 children, and I have another son, Dana, and my daughter, Diane. And Eric was just academically gifted from the get-go, and he was musically inclined, very musically gifted by playing the cello and the piano, and he spoke French, and like you said, he was graduated first in his class at Tosa East and went on to Marquette, and where senior year at Marquette was when he was diagnosed with bipolar. And then he tried law school at Syracuse University, but couldn't handle that. And after that, it was a struggle. It was a constant struggle. He had struggled with his voices, which gave him this new diagnosis, schizoaffective disorder. And he had was in and out of hospitals all the time and was struggling constantly. His medication caused him to have all kinds of side effects. So
he put on a lot of weight.
He put on a lot of weight because of the medication, and he just had a lot of problems with other health issues as well. He had many short-term jobs. He tried always to look for jobs, but had difficulty. Totally nonviolent, totally non-aggressive, very, very mild-mannered and nice to be with, a very engaging young man.
And he spent a lot of time volunteering at the NAMI office.
He suffered a lot with the mania and the depression, and so he was somewhat suicidal, but he did. He finally, the last years of his life, about the last 5 years of his life, he started volunteering for NAMI. He was in their program where you speak to groups all over the city and tell about your experiences with mental illness. He wanted to tell people about NAMI and how NAMI could help, but he also wanted to tell about the stigma, and his really mission was to reduce the stigma of mental illness, toward mental illness. And he felt that all the time in his life. He was very, very anxious to have people not recognize him as mentally ill. He didn't like that label of being mentally ill. What he liked was he wanted people to remember him for doing something and making a difference. His mission was that, and we were really pleased with him.
Before we kind of break down some of the ways that NAMI can help, and NAMI does help people, what are some of the symptoms that you saw of bipolar, even before some of the schizoaffective disorder? So some of the mania, some of the depression, because a lot of people, I think the term bipolar gets thrown out a lot, sort of flippant. But what does it truly mean? What kinds of symptoms or signs did you see in him?
Well, we didn't see much before he actually was diagnosed. It came on as a big surprise. But afterwards, there were a lot of mood swings. We recognized that he had a lot of mood swings where he'd have real highs, and then he'd have lows, and he'd be very depressed. And
he was hearing voices.
That was later. You know, that was a couple of years later after he was diagnosed that the voices came on.
And as a mom, I mean, it would be terrifying to hear voices.
It was terrifying. It would be terrifying for him.
And for him to describe that to you, the burden that you must have carried as his mom.
Yes, because we could tell right away. I mean, he was talking to voices a lot. He did have times when the medication worked and the voices settled down, but after a while they couldn't get a medication that really settled the voices down. But you would know, you could hear him talking to voices, and you could see him struggling with just the symptoms that he had.
When he told Jim Stengel with the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel that overall his experience left him with the sense that he had a life not fully lived. Right,
and I think he just wanted to be a regular guy, perceived as a regular guy that that was just struggling with an illness like everybody else. But the stigma that is around it makes it hard for a person to do that.
Because he'd have trouble with friends. And I remember you told me he liked a girl and she didn't return his affection. And it made him difficult to be with, right?
Yes, and I think Eric always had a difficulty with relationships. And part of that probably was his struggles with mental illness. And he had many, many friends that supported him and kept with him, but still, for him to reach out and get into relationships was difficult in the remaining years. You know, that was a hard time.
So you'd speak with him. You'd go on speaking.
Yes, we would have to go with him at times because sometimes he was not quite put together, and to make sure he presented himself well. But once he got there and got going on the speech, he did marvelously well. He was a very eloquent speaker, and he related to the audience very well and could answer questions quite well. I think he was very much in tune to his illness and what it was doing to him and how much he was losing because of it. And that was difficult for him.
I think it's so cool that you're part of this NAMI walk, and that's why you're here. It's coming up. You send letters to everybody who looks at you, not just people you know, but anybody you pass on the street to raise money.
If I get to know you and I know your face, you'll get a letter.
You'll get a letter. But how cool is it that she sent out letters the first year hoping to raise between $500 and $1,000, and I think it was something like $9,000.
The people have been marvelous.
And every year she says she's not going to raise the money, but she raises more.
Yeah, so it's amazing. And I want to show pictures.
Well, that's because of people that are willing to support this, and because of Eric, and because of his story. I really feel like he plays a role in this.
And I want to show pictures of the walk because it's a difficult topic, but at this walk, people are having fun. There's your husband carrying the Remembering Eric sign, but what I love is you do the sign too, where it's like you walk in memory of other people who can add their name to your board, and then you walk in support of people who are still in the fight, struggling with mental illness, because the stigma is so much a part of it.
And this walk is really a celebration of coming together. We're trying to raise the profile of mental illness in Milwaukee because 1 in 4 Americans in any given year will have a diagnosis of mental illness, some kind of mental disorder. And yet we don't know about it because nobody talks about it. That's a taboo subject.
What are some of the things that NAMI does for people who come to you diagnosed with a mental illness?
We have support groups. We have a support group that meets on Saturday morning for people with mental illness. We have an educational class that they can take, like a 10-week course about it. And then we also support families, and that's how I got involved. We have family-to-family 12-week free class. All of our programs are free, and this really matters. Yeah. And we also train police officers on how to respond to a mental health crisis. That's been really important. We go to jails and do trainings there. So we